had a good chat with the FAA senior manager today, and subjects that I brought up were the FRIA process, um, remote ID, and how we might improve the participation of CBOs as was described in the creation of the CBO. So hopefully we'll be working on each of those. Right away, we'll be working on FRIAs, and as I pointed out, in addition to the overall process being pretty broken, um, we definitely need to get going for something. And the FAA has said they don't want to call it a FRIA, but temporary event or event support would be a good way to look at it. So FPV racing, large RC events, so things like pretty much any multi-GP FPV racing. We think that would be ideal for some sort of exception. It is such a tiny volumetric space, and it is the risk is, in our view, to other aircraft, zero. So we'll be talking and working on that. We'll also pull in the other CBOs. We should also mention that I won't forget to mention the AMA efforts on the amendment and their write-up. Remote ID topics, predominantly those, if we can get that working. I've also asked about, is there anything we can do with the FAA on raising the 250 gram registration and manufacturing limits to 1 kilogram? And then finally, in the 2023 Reauthorization Act for the FAA, there is a stipulation that the Advanced Aviation Advisory Committee will be phased out or ended, and it will be replaced with a new federal advisory committee, and that will have 12 members, down from 41.
Somebody thought the AAM was too big and wanted people gone and decided to start it over with fewer people.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I can't see that's, I can just see where people are like, well, this is so expensive and it's too ungainly. Personally, I have exactly the opposite view. When it's not that hard to manage 50 to 60 people, and we were able to gather a lot of really bright folks and create relationships and create some really good recommendations for the FAA. So I'm sorely disappointed in this move, and with 12 seats, I think I'll wager a couple of cold ones that there will not be any recreational representation on that new FACA. So that has to go through the Reauthorization Act. With a little luck, that gets approved prior to the end of September 2023, and then the FAA has to act on that. So we know that they have taken 4 to 5 years to act on things like whether it's trust or CBOs, or so we'll see what happens with a FACA. It has a much higher importance to them since it includes the shiny new toy of advanced air mobility, things like air taxis.
Over on YouTube, Mike Bergman was asking a question. Do we have a counter ready for when they reply with no? I'm guessing that came from when you said things like raising the 250 gram limit. Mike, you can correct me if that wasn't what your comment was related to. So basically, if we ask things of the FAA, are we ready when they say no? What's our plan for that?
Great question. The plan is continue working it. Keep pushing rope with the FAA, and at the same time work more with our congressional representatives and senators during the next 2023 to 2028, the next period this reauthorization and press for oversight.
I assume
And
we're
some of the
also trying to push for more FRIAs, more locations that you can fly without remote ID.
Absolutely, and that was one of the points I brought up today. The FAA has documented once that we know of their estimate of 4,000 total FRIAs. So subtract out 2,600 AMA fields, and that leaves what's left over to cover 95% of the hobby population of 1.78 million people. So my calculations are if there's one FRIA for 20 people, that's 79,000 FRIAs. So somewhere between 4,000 and 79,000 we think is the correct answer. Even if it were half of our estimate at 40,000, that would be obviously an order of magnitude larger than the FAA's estimate. So yeah, we'll be continuing to push that. I brought it up today in those terms. On the FRIA process, we've also talked about the application programming interface. It sounds like a trivial thing, but we know that it could make life smoother, faster, less error prone. Right now, we're doing a fair amount of transcription into a system that is not flexible. And each time we get a denial, which we get frequently, uh, we don't have to start at the end of a 8-month queue, which is 8 months and counting for a number of us on the applications. But you do have to resubmit the application, so that's ridiculous. I mean, so we want to work with the FAA on a number of process activities that will make them more efficient, and it will allow the FAA to be a better communicator and to let us know, like, oh, you received my application, great, okay, what's the status, where are we, and then when we feed back edits that they want, it doesn't get denied or immediately, or there's so lots of things that we're looking to do.
Yeah. So for those who haven't been following along, we've submitted a lot of FRIA applications, and then we just outright get a rejection, and we have to basically start over with a new application. And we think it's ridiculous. They're supposed to like reach out to the person who made the application, get clarification on anything that may have caused it to get rejected, and then make their determination after that. Instead, they just flat out deny them, and you have to start over with a whole new application, which is a big pain in the butt
without
for
even
everybody.
knowing. Also, without
Yeah, don't even
knowing
know why.
what it is you're wrong.
Yeah, and the another frustration is that we've been advised to fill in additional detail, and so there is a character limit. It's a very small character limit, so it's
500
pretty tough.
characters.
500 characters is pretty tight, and so that's one. And then two, it's obvious that the people some of the time who are reviewing the applications are not reading the 500 characters. So
Yes.
those are things that that we're focusing on, as well as there's no service level agreement. There's no agreement from the FAA that says they will at least respond or start working on an application within this amount of time. And so this is just normal, business process stuff that we've got experience in. We can help. We want to help, and we'll be working with the other CBOs on the discussions that that the FAA hopefully will be setting up.
Double A is asking, so what is it that they require from a field to become a FRIA? Can it be a church grounds? And I would say it probably could be a church grounds, but it depends. And one thing we do know is they don't want it to be like your backyard. They don't want it to be private property. They want it to be more of a public space, like you would think an AMA field would be.
Not in the suburbs.
Yeah, they don't want it to be in a neighborhood, like with lots of houses and people nearby.
But Double A, you can also reach out to me. Just since I know you from racing, just send me a message. I'll also help you with that.
Right. So, and as Dan and Alex have said, not your personal property unless you also happen to be running races or
Yeah.
running a group
Or
of flying there. Um, no operations over people. So if you say, well, we fly over, folks are here, and we fly over them, that'll be an instant denial.
for
Um,
example, one of the places that we got approved that is both a residential property and a active community flying site is No Quarter Ranch, which is the same location that the Global Championships is held at, and a lot of racing in general in Florida. And so they were approved as a FRIA, and it's the backyard of some of the pilots in that area, and so
right.
that's
So
a that's one example of them approving a backyard that is also a community flying site.
right, right.
I've
So
gotten 2 approvals so far, Cheeto.
yes, yes. Well done, Alex.
And
Thank you.
did you already say what kind of locations were those?
No. So well, a little bit with the No Quarter Ranch. So that one, it is in rural Florida. So you can look up the location pretty easily, but uh, it it's in a rural area. There are neighbors around. However, the area where flying is done is not necessarily near where the neighbors are, and there's a tree border between other neighbors as well. So there's a tree line that borders the neighbors, as well as it's fairly rural in general. The other location that was approved as a FRIA was a local field by me called Buzzard RC. It's it's an AMA club, but they went through us to do the FRIA application. And so it's also that's in rural Pennsylvania, Amish country. So not much around, and you the roads are all single lanes, uh, and so it's a fairly rural area, farmland surrounding it. There aren't many homes near it, so that that's the type of location that I've seen approved so far.
Sure.
We have a couple
And
that were and locations that we've seen denied, I guess, just to profile the locations and surroundings are suburb areas, semi-rural areas, and uh, urban environments.
And those
and
approvals first came out yesterday, right? It seems like the first wave of approvals from the
Correct.
FAA came out
Yesterday.
yesterday.
right. So, a couple of things there. And in addition, to key on the points of what's getting approved are the GPS locations must stipulate only where you're going to fly. So if it's a park, don't include the roads, don't include bleachers, don't include spectator areas, just where you're going to fly. Now, as a fixed wing RC guy, there's frequently the notion of this is where we take off and land, and then there's overflight. Wherever you set the bounds of the FRIA is where you're expected to be flying. So keep it limited and don't include roads or buildings, because buildings and roads will imply operations over people, which will get you a quick denial.
DFW is asking if these were the first few that we submitted. I think the order seems there's not necessarily an order to it, but the approvals were some of your
Yes and
first
no.
ones.
It's in order ish. So by the time that I submitted them, at least, at least in the order that they were reviewed, that's the order that they were approved or denied. Or well, the ones that were denied immediately were denied before the ones that were pending approval. But of the ones that I got approved, the one that I submitted before, I submitted the one for the local field by me, Buzzard RC, before No Quarter Ranch. But those two FRIAs were submitted back to back, and so they were like application 147 and 148, and they were approved within hours of each other. But with the
And
147 before 148.
And the rough approximate time frame that you submitted those, Alex?
I believe it was late December.
Right. So right around the same time frame that I submitted an application and have not heard anything back, even not even
Does it show
a
under
denial.
review?
I'm not sure.
If you log into Drone Zone, it might say under review.
Okay. I will do that.
How many
But
applications have we, the FPVFC, submitted so far?
I've submitted 10, and I have 2 or 3 more on the way.
And I've done 2, and Dave, you've done 2.
2.
So around 15.
Yeah, and I have another one on deck that from a member that I need to get processed. So those are Dan made me think of it when he said, so yesterday was we saw a couple of AMA being approved. We anticipate FTCA and STEM plus C will get approvals. We got confirmation from the FAA that yes, they would have to have the programmatic environmental assessment FRIA process in place before they could approve any flying locations or any FRIAs. So we think that that happened yesterday. Again, this was part of my request in terms of, since there are only 4 organizations working on these from a non-educational perspective, it would have been great if you could have told us yesterday the PEA FRIA is now in place. You will be seeing approvals, or we can process approvals now. That would have been nice to know. It would have been helpful for us to communicate that out to the community. So that's an example of how we'd like we're trying to get this to be a bit more of an open process.
And Torque Roller and YouTube saying that they think just about every school, at least all the schools that have STEM programs, should have a FRIA, and that alone would go far beyond the FAA's projected estimates for FRIAs. And we do know that for sure the STEM plus C group is trying to help a lot of schools get FRIAs for all of their STEM programs.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Was it 4 or 6 FRIAs that the FAA estimated for CBOs other than AMA? Because either way, we have at least 2 of those.
No, the comment about that school and STEM programs, plus a CBO can establish a school as a charter organization, which immediately means that the students can have 44809 privileges as part of the class. And if you think about it, it's not for your pleasure, so it's a Part 107 activity. It's like, wait a second, we don't want kids to learn, so there is that stipulation, and that's what STEM plus C is actively doing, and we're supportive of that, and we will we're working with FTCA. We know we'll be doing that as well, and to some extent, we likely will be as well from a FPVFC perspective. Can't comment, don't know about AMA.
Language to fix that is also in the 2023 Reauthorization Act as well. So it includes primary and secondary education institutions as recreation.
Exactly right. And so that's in both the House and the Senate versions. Completely agree. So that requirement to create a charter of a CBO would go away depending on when the FAA turns the mandate, which should be end of September, into an advisory circular, something. So I bet another couple cold ones that that's not going to happen in October 2023, which is why we think it's a great idea to continue the CBO to charter educational institutions, primary and secondary schools, so that they can get 44809. That obviously does not get them FRIA status. And that's a perfect segue to the AMA has been working closely with a number of congressional staffers. And there's an amendment on the table that has been going around. We can, I think we've posted it on our Discord. And it is effectively, one of the big elements in it is that it allows a CBO to self-declare a FRIA. So again, this is an amendment that has to go, so right now we're waiting for the House and the Senate to pass their individual bills. They then have to go to conference. The conference is to reconcile any differences between the two bills, has to go back to both chambers, be passed, then be signed by the President of the United States, and hopefully that happens prior to September, the end of September. Then, assuming that amendment stays intact, then the FAA has to act on it. So we will see how quickly that can happen, and hopefully that amendment does happen. That will make the FRIA process dramatically different, and we will be on top of it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, I've got some concerns about that amendment and whether that's actually would turn out to be a good thing or not. But hard to say.
Right. We've been around the block a couple times, and it's like, well, we will celebrate when it's good news, and if it's not, we'll just continue working the processes that are in front of us. Good questions. So I hope there's a point here, Bagzilla. So I hope all of the multi-GP chapters get a FRIA, probably, but that's probably not going to happen. So we're supportive of as many of the chapters as possible. You don't have to own the property, so a multi-GP race races occurring at fields that they use for the season are great examples of existing flying field, not flying over people. It ticks all of the boxes that we like. Go ahead, Alex. You were saying?
Yeah, for chapters, I know a lot of chapters, if they have an AMA charter, they've been going through the AMA usually, or several chapter organizers have also been reaching out to myself, and I've been helping out a lot of the multi-GP chapters. So the difficulty with free applications for multi-GP chapters is their fields aren't necessarily a field that they really control, or they only host races once a month, usually at that location, which might not be enough to consider them a FRIA for those events.
Yeah, would you want it to be a FRIA the rest of the time, or only during the events?
Yeah,
right, and we can
the current
see
FRIA process. That's the issue with it.
Agreed.
Or one of the limiting issues.
Right, and that's one of the things that we know that the FAA is thinking about. Well, the organization that submits the application is going to control that airspace, right? And it's like, oh my gosh. No is the short answer. So if multi-GP FPV racing sites get denied because that reason, we fly there twice a month, then we want to pursue the notion of, all right, so how do we create a temporary exception that allows us to not use broadcast modules on racers? That to me is a very logical step. And while we're doing that, that would also pertain to fixed wing events. I'll be working one that's running its 54th year in upstate New York. So those are, we have to. Okay. So that's what we have. So great questions. And thank you for your patience with the FRIA process. This is also consuming a lot of time. It's consuming a lot of our time, STEM plus C, FTCA, and we know the AMA as well. So it's a lot of folks are trying to help out and fix, and we appreciate it.
So Dave, Discord now also has an event chat that you probably don't have that chat window open. So there's a whole nother set of chats that happen during these meetings.
Oh.
I don't know if you see the notification for it hiding somewhere, but there's been a couple other questions added to that one as well.
I don't see
Too
it.
many chats.
I don't see an event.
One of the questions is
there it is.
This whole thing with RD is pretty confusing. Later this year, after mid-September, can FPVFC put together some guidelines on what's expected as well as what pilots should realistically expect?
Oh, yes, but could the question expect with respect to what? I wasn't really following.
I'm assuming law enforcement and
yeah, he expands on that, saying if we'll tell people, I think, more about, did it turn out that law enforcement is just sort of ignoring these regulations, or does it turn out that they're going to be well informed and be real sticklers for enforcing these regulations? Things like that.
Yeah, that's yeah. Yes. And in as much as one of our 7 is an officer in Arlington Police and responsible for a fleet of drone pilots, he is also a part of first responders, the 501c3 led by Charles Werner that we've worked with now for 4 years. And so Rob's perspective is invaluable, and so he can share some of that, and we'll, so what's the perspective from law enforcement, and what do we anticipate from enforcement? That's a good thing. I would imagine that it would help if we looked over here's the latest in terms of what you need to input for a FRIA. And our philosophy is FRIA first and then a broadcast module. We've talked about the work that we're doing with Flight Test on a purpose-designed recreational broadcast module for remote ID. So it's 10 grams, and we feel we're trying to not have that for racing because we'd rather have an exception in place for racing. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Brian posted the video with Rob in it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great. This is Rob Robertson is one of us, and he was with us at Flight Fest, represented both Arlington Police as well as FPVFC very well, and it was great for him to meet Rob Lowe, regional administrator of the FAA Southwest, who was our guest at Flight Fest. So that's a great question. So free remote ID. What do we need? What do I need to do? So yes, I mean these are things that have become second nature to us, and what we hear about regularly is what's remote ID? What do I have to do something? And so we're hearing really basic questions, and we're happy to try to fill some of those in.
Yeah, another thing I'm sure we'll push and will gain steam would be like the sub 250 gram drones, and they will increasingly get better and better, assuming we can't get the registration limit raised to a kilogram.
Right. Good. Okay. Other questions on? And so what are we working on right now? We're working on the comments for the new FAA noise policy, which spans all aircraft. And so it does incorporate small UAS. So Blunty and I were working on this. There are over 1,240 comments in already. The due date is 31 July 2023. We'll have that done. Our comments will relate to will directly relate to the questions that were asked, and I know that sounds sort of obvious, but of the 1,240 comments that were posted, we cannot find any that answer the questions that the FAA asked. They were almost universally, airliners fly over my house, please stop. So not terribly helpful to what the question was asked, but I can understand the frustration. So lots of, as I've mentioned, the noise is, we feel extremely important because the frequency of drones is such that it's an annoying sound. It's not loud. And so one of the, where we want to voice and respond to the questions about what are the metrics that would make sense. And we think that instead of decibel level, which is back from 60s, something a little more like what's the pressure measured in pascals that you feel, which takes into consideration the distance. So you really need, when you're talking sound, a distance plus a decibel level. So more than you ever wanted to know about sound. But that's one of the things we're working on to comment. And we've asked the FAA, we'd really like to talk to the people that we're sending this information, because for the last several years, it's been a black hole. We work hard, we produce the comments, we get consensus on the comments, and it goes into a black hole. Now, if it's a rule, we get it, that rule makers cannot talk to the public. Got it. A lot of what we write comments on are not yet into a rulemaking process. So there can be a dialogue, and that's what we're asking for.
Cheeto's saying that they are an AMA CD, and the AMA said that they have a waiver process for events after September. Is that something you've heard of, Dave?
No, was that did the individual say they're a contest director, a CD?
An AMA CD.
Yeah, I don't think there is I don't think there's a remote ID waiver. There is a waiver for altitude. So
yeah, there was that new waiver process they were talking about.
If you're flying turbines or aircraft over 55 pounds, that's in place. But I have not heard anything about a remote ID waiver. And I would be delighted to be wrong.
Maybe that's what what the FAA is working on as things for races and events is a waiver process, but they haven't given many details on what that process is going to be.
Right. When that's now possible, thanks to the AMA. The AMA is using a modified waiver process for altitude and weight. Those are the first waivers for 44809 operations. That's a big deal from the perspective of whenever in the past, whenever we brought up the notion of a waiver, we got the, oh no, waivers are just for Part 107. We can't talk about that. So they've opened the door, and so it's possible that we will see a waiver for our temporary events, or a race, an event that the gentleman who's an AMA contest director runs as well. So we talked to Tyler. I expect to be talking to him this week. I'll ask him about Tyler Dobbs, Senior Director, AMA Government Affairs.
Good. Real quick, could you guys expand a little bit on the FAA noise stuff? I haven't heard about it. I was just curious just generally what that is.
It doesn't go back quite as far as the 1870s, where the 250 gram comes from, but the single most prevalent complaint from citizens about aircraft is noise. And so the airliners, I'm in a landing zone, and it just changed, and you're destroying the value of my house. So lots and lots of formal complaints to the FAA on noise of aircraft. And so there are a series of questions, and the document was released in, I want to say, May of this year, and the FAA looks to documents that go back to 1969 and 1979, and that's where most of the science is that they reference for their regulations. And so they're asking industry to comment on what are the communities, what are the concerns, and then what are the appropriate metrics. One of the, for example, one of the metrics is a DNL, day-night averaging. How you get average out of L, I'm really not sure, but they take the number of decibels over a 24-hour period and average it. That's great for us from a perspective of, wow, if we're flying for a couple minutes out of the day, a DNL is wonderful. And so they are hinting at and asking questions like, is there an appropriate operational segmentation that would help us? The FAA has said and endorsed one size does not fit all, but then of course we've seen lots of drone regulations where one size fits all. So we will be pushing on the notion of one size does not fit all, and we will be recommending that there be a small UAS category that should be considered separately from an airliner. And then we also it's also a literature review. So if we come across different research, we'll put that forward. In the Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee that Dan and I worked on, one of the documents that I came across was an academic paper on the frequency of drones and why it's disturbing to us. And so it's a thoughtful academic paper that we'll put forward to the FAA. Hopefully that provides a little bit of background on the document. And so our normal process would be that we would post our comments if time allowing. We will do that. We always post what we have submitted. It's a matter of public record, and we have posted what we submit in these comments. So we try to get our comments out and get an opportunity for folks to comment on our comments before we submit them. We may or may not have that just from a time, and that's on me from a perspective of life has gotten in the way of getting this done sooner.
Awesome.
IO,
Thanks for the explanation.
IO is nearly 24/7. That's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Remote ID, FRIA. I saw photos of I'm excited of our flight test remote ID. It's looking good. Samples will go out. Production level samples will go out to this week. So we're excited. Alex is going to get a couple of them, and so he can determine if there's interference flying multiple drones. But you probably want to have multiple people flying the drones, right, Alex? No swarm
Recreational
technology.
Recreational has no rule against multiple operators.
Oh, really?
There are multiple drones under one operator.
I did know that that's a 107 regulation. I thought it extended to recreational.
If it's not in 44809, then you're free to do it.
I'm good with
And
that.
it's not in our safety guidelines, so
we don't say you can't fly more than one at a time.
At least not that I'm aware, and I think I've read it a couple of times.
That's good. Yeah. All right.
Well, over in YouTube, we got off on a little bit of a tangent talking about the noise regulations and using specially built like noisy props to annoy people. But then I suggested, well, maybe somebody should make props that whistle. That would be interesting. Fly around with a whistling drone. I don't know how that would rank in the noise pollution area, but that would be kind of cool.
One of the aircraft I designed was a pusher, and we put the motor pretty much in the center of the plane, and it was turning over 30,000 RPM, and a 6-inch prop. What an awful sound. Just so the opposite of a relaxing high-speed plane, just a whining, pitching, yeah.
Well, I could imagine just like if you take a fixed wing airplane and you put some sort of whistle right behind the prop and it's just constantly blowing air through it and making a really loud whistle.
Yes, we could do that. We could do that. Well, So is anyone working on a remote ID spoofer circuit yet?
That's one of the. Isn't that one of the articles you have this week from Josh?
I think it is. Little foreshadowing. So yeah, yes it is. Okay, so we'll get back to that topic. Hopefully, keep some interest there. I did want to mention Turtle Mode FPV, and so we have a number of mostly retailers who have endorsed us. And the endorsement is not monetary. It is that these organizations endorse how and what we're doing, and how we do it. Better said. And Turtle Mode FPV has been added to that list. We're grateful for that. And this Turtle Mode FPV is a new company creating Street League beautiful frames and other equipment. So please check them out if you're into Street League. And there's a link, I believe, his site from the Street League if you can't remember Turtle Mode FPV.
Turtle Mode's here in the Discord chat, or in Discord.
All right.
Discord listening in on the meeting.
Way to go, John. Excellent.
How you guys doing? Thanks for the mention, Dave.
Welcome. Thank you. Glad you're here. And please speak up if you have any comments or if we say anything amiss. Keep us on.
Yeah, will do. It's been an interesting meeting tonight. I'm glad I joined in.
Great.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, Dan, shall we move to the articles that Josh was kind enough to collect for us?
I can see if I can get sharing my screen and get the right browser shared here. Go live.
Okay, we'll get that.
Bring that up. Hopefully everybody can see it. I'm on the first link that he sent, if that's where you want to start. If not, I can jump around to whichever one you want to do.
Any sequence is fine. This is cool. DJI has announced that that drones, and I'm pretty sure it's not DJI specific, but drones have been responsible for saving 1,000 lives. They crossed that threshold. This is a number that when Brendan Schulman was the VP of Policy and Governmental Affairs Global, he started keeping track of this as a corporation. And so this to us is a big deal in the sense of if there's when I get the conversations of drones are this or that, negative, I come back with, well, they're really helpful to public safety. And now we can say, and they've been responsible for saving 1,000 lives. So and right in this article, very interesting. So DJI is a privately held company. There are congressional hints and winks that DJI might be a state-owned enterprise, but everything we know about DJI is it is a privately held company. They are absolutely 100% Chinese. They have over 2,000 engineers. Last time I knew, it was in excess of $25 billion a year. So it's and they have over 70% share of the videography drone market. So number one by a lot, great technology. And this article is all about, hey, we're helping save lives. And then it goes on to ask us if you use our products, please help effectively the Drones for Good message.
So these are the 1,000 that have been reported, DJI. Not necessarily. Obviously, there's going to be more than that. And then you're saying they're asking that if people are using them for purposes like saving lives, to let them know so they can be counted. Is that right?
Yes. As well as please tell your friends, neighbors, and congressional representatives. There's a hint.
Doesn't DJI also have a map? Oh yeah, it says they have their map.
Oh, yeah. Using its drone rescue map. Yep. So they actually track that and put them on a map where people have been rescued?
Yes. Yep. They have a map that shows that.
To me, this is very smart PR. which helps, which is a great segue to some of the other articles. Enough on this one?
Sure. Well, we can jump to another Chinese-related article.
Yeah, this is good. So we're teeing up the variety of situations in the articles that Josh found this week around. So that's interesting. You want to ban Chinese drones. So we've banned Chinese drones from Department of Defense, and then it was Department of Commerce. And now there are a number of states who are following Florida's path. And any public safety officer in Florida can tell you that if they used DJI before and they can't now, it's a problem.
But wait, didn't we just hear an article about how many people were saved by DJI drones?
That's, yeah. So around the world, so we're now cutting off our noses to spite our faces in the United States. So, and this article or one of the other articles points to there is a whole firmware load that DJI effectively created a clean room creation with Department of Commerce observing to prove that there was a build of a firmware build that had no communications with anything, especially nothing back to China. But that was then struck down as not authorized. So it's being that was discounted. So after DJI invested to pay for that, it was several $1 million. The U.S. government said, nope, not good enough.
They even worked with the Air Force as well on that
Yeah.
too, not just the Department of Commerce.
Yeah, frustrating. So, to me, I get it. I understand the motivation, but we do not have a solution in place. And this article and the other articles point out that we've got Blue UAS, which is a list of drones that can be purchased for use in the federal government. They have to be, the U.S.-based companies. And Florida has picked up Blue UAS as their list. And this article points out that isn't it interesting that all of the components are from China. And so I say all. I know they're here and there. There are components that are not made in China, but if flight controllers, ESCs, motors, end frames, end props.
And what Meat's asking in the Discord chat is like, isn't the video chips? I assume a lot of the video chips, well, what he is giving examples are DJI, Walk Snail. Those definitely are. Those are Chinese chips.
Yep.
I don't know if Autel or if Skydio is actually using Chinese video chips, but I wouldn't be surprised if they are. It seems like the most likely place to get them.
Skydio uses an NVIDIA processor, so they sweep all of the programming into a massive, powerful CPU, which of course is manufactured by TSMC.
And
so
NVIDIA would be a U.S.
China
company, right? But the chips are actually manufactured not in the United States.
Or their motors,
well,
right?
Autel is also Chinese. It's just they're working on their U.S. side of things.
Right.
But they're still a Chinese primary company.
Yep. Yeah, the video chips, even HD0, in the FPV space. A lot of the patents are registered in the United States. Manufacturing is in China.
All right.
Okay, I think probably enough on this one.
Unless anybody else has any other questions.
Yeah, well, love the questions and comments. Really appreciate that. This is an interesting one on the spoofing. So Joshua Bardwell did a video on spoofing, and this is absolutely intriguing to me as a geek. And so we can't find anything that says you can't do this. If this is an issue because you're transmitting it from the ground. So what's the issue? So
the only potential issue I can think of would be if it was an FCC violation of some sort, but we don't.
Right, but a lot But
know that.
all you need is a component that's FCC Part 15 approved, and it's legit.
Yeah, because it's all being broadcast over Bluetooth or Wi-Fi spectrum, which we're all using for all of our devices anyway.
Exactly. So this is possible. We'll see what happens here. This could be a response to the Department of Homeland Security, didn't want to change the part of the remote ID regulation that identified the location of the ground control station or the pilot operating the controls. This, so this puts up chaff, if you will, about where the individual is. So we'll see where this goes. I'm not advocating it as a geek. It's, very interesting to me.
What hardware does this require to run?
Is it just an ESP32 or something?
Yep, a Bluetooth transmitter, and then enough logic to generate the message element. So not much.
What's an ESP32 board?
It's basically like an Arduino, but it's basically an Arduino that's not an Arduino.
Okay.
Same functionality as of an Arduino. I'd say it's probably in between an Arduino and a Raspberry Pi, but closer to an Arduino.
Okay. I want to see somebody to create an app for your mobile phone that does this, since obviously your phone's got all the hardware to do it.
Unless
it really
it's
does.
iPhone.
Yeah.
Well, an iPhone has the hardware. I don't know if Apple lets you have access to it or not at the level you need. But
yeah, an iPhone would be could put out. I don't know if the Bluetooth transmitters, but Bluetooth beacon. That's a good question. So, Androids receive Bluetooth 5. iPhones don't. They receive Bluetooth 4, but I don't know about on the transmission side.
Well, it should be able to transmit Bluetooth because that's how you work with wireless earbuds or with certain wireless toys. So it can transmit Bluetooth.
Yeah. And Alex Meat backs you up. ESP32 is a cheap little microcontroller. Infinite number of them in existence. Yeah, agreed. Yeah, good description. And once again, we should recognize Meat. He is all over our Discord servers, helping people out every day. We really appreciate that. Thanks for doing that, and always with gracious and really super helpful, super technical answers. Really appreciate it.
Is anybody going to add a feature to Express LRS or to Betaflight boards that have Bluetooth or Wi-Fi transmitters on them to spoof a bunch of drones every time you go fly?
Yes.
You certainly could.
Captain.
I've heard of that.
What's Captain
Bry?
Well, but he's working on official remote ID support.
I think there are others.
But you could sort of split that off to also spoof a whole bunch of remote ID signals at the same time.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know of anyone working on on a project to spin up a commercially available spoofer. Yeah, but I do anticipate that there are going to be a number of DIY recipes that would allow people to cook these up if they wanted. Okay, so interesting topic. So that's the spoofer article. This is an interesting one. So this came in from Drone DJ. So we've learned a couple of tricks, and this is a proposed bill. So the way this is written is like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. This is terrible. Imminent doom to happen tomorrow. Once you dig into it, it's this happened. So there's no reference to the bill. I found it. It's HR 433 from the 118th Congress. There it is, sponsored by a Democrat, and they have 2 Republican sponsors. That in itself is unusual these days, in a good way. To me, as I started reading the document, it's a little hard to read because they're doing things like, change this word to that word, change this word to that word, insert this phrase in this sentence.
Of course, you have to go back to the original document and see how that affects the whole paragraph. Yeah.
Right. So my first quick read through most of it is, I'm not sure this is good at all. It looked like they are broadening the ability of DHS and other law enforcement to confiscate and perform counter UAS activities. That, in my book, would be bad. So we'll keep an eye on this one. I'm nervous about it. I've asked Rob Robertson to take a look when he can. He's very astute in this area. So good catch for Josh to find this. This is in early stages. So where does this bill stand? It's been drafted, and it has not yet gone to a committee. So a bill has to go into a committee, be approved by the committee, go out to the full floor of the House, and be to get to the floor. It has to be brought by the Speaker. Speaker equals McCarthy equals Republican. Lead sponsor equals Democrat. That might kill it right there. So we'll watch this. We'll watch HR 4333 as it progresses. If it progresses and it's looking bad, then we may, get vocal about it and ask for responses. They should just release diffs. Yeah, so true. That would, yeah, but being yeah. Yeah. Good questions. Any questions on this one? So, as the more obscure bills come up, we have we've gained some ability to read these things, understand them, and I think our understanding of UAS regulations allows us to read through these things and understand some of the salient points. So that helps. And as we welcome any comments and critiques on what we've said or done. Is that it, Dan?
There was one more. The FAA bills would launch drones to fight wildfires.
Yeah. This one I read and I'm like, what was this about? What were they telling us? There is so beyond the article, there's a lot going on. And to me, I think this was I think this was more about the, hey, drones are doing good, and our hands are, they're being grounded by legislation. So that's bad. There is some fantastic technology going on wildfire spotting, as well as assisting in containing wildfires. Wildfires, given climate change, are a growing threat. West part of the United States, as well as anyone in the Northeast, knows that Canada is having huge issues with wildfires, and glad to see U.S. firefighters traveling up to Canada to help out. It's dangerous, brutal work. And drones are technology that can help save lives and property. So this is, to me, I think this is more of the same. This is, not only are we saving lives, we're still, wildfires destroy property, not just houses, but the ability to produce food. And this is, it's a great utilization of technology. And as I said, it's both for surveillance as well as mitigating fires. There are some, ArduPilot is working on a number of technologies in this area, and it's very, very cool stuff. ArduPilot system developer is in Australia, and guess what? Lots of wildfire issues there as well. Okay. Anything else? How about look at that? Look at the clock. Are we good?
Just about. John Solo over on YouTube's asking if FRIAs will show up on the remote ID app for the public to know. As far as we know, the FAA has stated that FRIAs are going to show up on their UAS facilities map, which I assume you've checked, and they don't exist.
It's not up on there yet. But I assume once it is added there, apps like Aloft, or I mean Air Control now.
Right.
Be nice.
We'll probably add a
There are
layer
friends.
for that, because many of those apps also have layers for fixed sites. So I'd assume that they would also add FRIAs to that.
Since it'll be out there in public database, they can find ways to integrate it into the existing apps.
Because they have access to the API.
Right.
We don't expect the remote ID scanners that are out there, drone scanner and Flight Test will have one, and the Drone ID org, we don't expect those to show FRIA maps at this point. But just as Alex said, facility maps and Air Control put out by Aloft, I'd bet that they're going to add a layer. Good question.
I suppose you want to know if you accidentally fly outside of your FRIA, but
maybe you don't want to know.
Or, I don't know.
Other questions on the variety of platforms?
I don't see any new questions coming in. Everybody, this is your chance to get your questions asked right now. Well, Dave takes a pause.
2 weeks.
Operators are standing by.
Otherwise, we're going to finish just about on time for once.
All right, we're done.
Alex, get back to the homework, and we distracted you, Alex. So thank you very much for the work on the FRIAs on the applications, and thank you for working IO as well as flying. That's a great event.
Oh, you didn't get to talk too much about Flight Fest. That we cut you short, and you couldn't talk about that last 2 weeks ago either. But you could do a quick 30 seconds. How was Flight Fest a couple weekends ago?
Flight Fest was great. We had Josh Cook, Rob Robertson, and me there for 3.5 days, and Alex was able to join us for a day and a half, which was fantastic. We've not. This is the first time we had that many of us together in the same location, which in itself was wonderful. The event is it's close to life-changing. It's so positive. And all we did for 3.5 days was help people fix drones and get flying. And we were given half of the Pilot Institute tent. So thank you to Pilot Institute. Great group of people, great services. And it attracted people to come in to their side of the tent and look at the equipment they have, as well as the Part 107 studies, and then come talk to us and ask questions about Betaflight, ask questions about regulations, ask questions about, I have this little drone, I don't know how to get it connected. So it was incredibly useful for us to be energized about so many kids. There are over 1,000 pilots at that event. Combat is, if you watch any of the videos on Flight Fest, about 3 times a day, there's a combat session with fixed-wing foam RC planes that try to bash each other out of the sky, and Alex participated in that with his cousin, and that was fantastic. And it's amazing how difficult it is to hit another aircraft when there are even up to 200 of them in the air simultaneously. So great fun, and then some of the most fun is, after all of these planes are badly damaged, everyone helps everyone else to go put them back together. So there are classes going on and kids being taught on how to build planes, and moms helping kids and dads helping kids, and older brothers. One young man had one day to fly, and he dedicated his day to helping a young guy put together a drone so he could fly, and gave up his flying. I mean, so it's that sort of event, selfless and laughing and good camaraderie. So thank you to our members for allowing us to cover the cost for us to travel. We brought, we came in from Arizona, Texas, New York, and Maryland. So a fair amount of travel to get to Ohio. So thank you. And if you can get to Flight Fest, it is it's a blast, and it's where we are successfully integrating racing drones and drones into the mix, and we flew a Street League drone there, and next year we'll bring along a turtle mode FPV heavy metal drone, and they are Alex 1.280. Is that correct? Kilogram?
Yep.
Did I get the number right? So these are heavy. So they're a lot of fun, and wow, can they take a beating? And so, well, a great time.
Oh, you briefly mentioned earlier that Rob Lowe from the FAA was there, and you guys walked around and talked a lot. How did that go with Rob? What did he learn? What did people learn from him? How was that, having an FAA employee at the flight test?
Thanks so much for reminding us. So I met Rob Lowe, Regional Administrator of Southwest Region. So if you work for the FAA in the Southwest region, you work for Rob Lowe. So this is a senior executive in the FAA. I was on a panel with him several years ago and invited him to Flight Fest because whoever we can get to come to Flight Fest from the FAA, it's a good thing. Rob has flown model airplanes for 40 years, and one of his hobbies is to call at air shows. So the whole event was something that was normal to him, but on such an incredibly large scale. We got to meet 2 undergraduates from Purdue University that were working on a Navy-sponsored aircraft, about a 12-foot fuselage made of carbon fiber. They flew that. That was fantastic. We also were able to introduce Rob to a number of kids working on putting together their first airplane. And we also, Rob saw firsthand our working to fix and get kids back in the air with drones. So I believe he found it useful, and we also got Rob under a set of goggles. Rob was able to do a fly with Rob, and he said that was an amazing experience. I suspect there's probably a set of FPV goggles in Rob's future. So it was a great experience to share, what this large group is doing. We certainly talked about Flight Test Community Association. We talked about FPV Freedom Coalition, STEM+C. We talked about the STEM programs in Flight Test, as well as the work we do with AMA and the upcoming broadcast module. So I think it was certainly useful for us to convey what's going on, and for someone as busy as Rob Lowe to take a day. I mean, that's to be there a full day means he's got to burn up the best part of 3 days to travel, and part of that was his weekend. So we're very, very grateful for the time he took, and we think it was a very positive experience for both he and us.
That sounds great. It's too bad he's not at all involved in drone regulations, but he is someone high up at the FAA who has some influence on non-drone related things.
And very frequently. And so ATC is air traffic control is part of his purview. And in many, many of the projects that we worked on with the Drone Advisory Committee and then the Advanced Aviation Committee, that we had air traffic controllers with us, management, and ACTA, the union, with us. And these are really sharp people, and every one of them with incredible experience and insight that really helped us work through what's sensible and what's maybe not sensible, be it for unmanned traffic management or beyond visual line of sight, or whatever makes sense to maintain safety around airports. So really good to get his view of what we're doing, because we may ask for some help to have one of his people participate with us as a subject matter expert.
All right. Any other questions? If not, we should stop distracting Alex so he can get back to his homework. Well, fully focus on his homework and not multitasking.
You're going to go to bed now?
Yeah, I'll just wake up early in the morning and continue working on it.
Perfect.
Well, early for some people, or early for people my age, but normal for probably most people.
Especially
late for Dave, I'm sure.
This color
Yeah,
hair.
be like 6 a.m. So
Yeah, that's late.
exactly.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone.
For my people, it's early.
Understood. Great questions. Good discussion. Thanks so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.